today on the show today, Kula Lisboa. So Kula is someone I've met in my travels in Portugal and get on well with. Nice guy, does some cool work. I think probably like embodied musical facilitator, does team building, does various kinds of community events. He'll tell us about himself. So Kula, welcome.
Hello, everybody.
How did you get interested in what you do now? Like, what was your journey in?
How did I got interested? I started at a very young age, at 13, between 13 and 17. I got really interested about what was happening with spirit. I was interested in things that we could not see, and so I started reading a lot of books, like very mystical books and all of that. But I was finding some answers, and it was helping me because I was going through also a very hard, difficult process of growing up, and also with a difficult parent around. So the books gave me some curiosity about life, and what I did was I read a lot of books and made some crazy experiments back in the day, like out-of-body experiences and things like that. But I was looking for some sense and purpose for my life. So at the age of 18, I went off my parents' home and I started traveling, hitchhiking around Europe, and I ended up in a festival where I had a tremendous breakthrough experience, and where I realized that I wanted to follow rhythm and music. Especially I was looking for an identity. So being an African born person raised in Europe, I was kind of in between worlds, and I didn't feel really African, but I didn't feel really European. But somehow there was something impelling me to kind of go after my roots. And so I found the rhythm through the djembe community. And since that time, I was one of the founders of the djembe community and Mandinga culture.
I want to say what a djembe is for those who don't know, because
djembe is an instrument. I have it here.
So it's a type of drum.
Yeah, it's a type
so those on YouTube can see it. So it's kind of what you might imagine when you think of kind of African style, kind of large drum.
Yeah.
You put between your knees.
Yeah, it's African style drum, and then from that it was a whole adventure. I started going more. At first, we didn't have a clue what we were doing, so we were just jamming around with these drums, and expecting some inspiration to come. And then for some reason there was this immigration phenomenon happening in Portugal and all over Europe, that a lot of West African people started arriving, and some of them were real connoisseurs of their culture and were masters on their own land. And so we had the opportunity to start studying and engaging with that language. But that was just the beginning, because that was just a kind of putting me in the track, but was not particularly giving me all the answers. I had to go and make the way to start finding other answers. And it was later on, like maybe 10, 15 years later, when I decided to go and look for a drum circle facilitation. And because that's where I started as a drummer that would drum instinctively, intuitively, with no rules. And then I went into specific culture, West African, and I studied and I made a lot of shows, but it was not fulfilling my soul. And that's when I decided to go and look for drum circle facilitation. And I went to the States and studied with one of the biggest authorities in the area, which was Arthur Hall. And drum circles changed my life completely. It was like a very important turn in my life, because from that on, I realized that I decided that I wanted to make a living out of facilitating drum circles. not only for regular people, but especially for the corporate world. And that was when my company was born. And
okay, pausing that. We're going to get to that for sure.
Yeah.
So let me clarify a couple of things, Kula. So
Yeah.
you were born, you were raised and grew up in Portugal, but you were born somewhere in West Africa. Is that right?
Yeah, I was born in Cape Verde. Yeah.
Cape Verde. Okay, so it's a Portuguese
ex-colony.
colony.
Yeah.
Ex-colony.
Yeah, Portuguese ex-colony. Yeah, yeah.
I've not been there, but I've heard it's beautiful.
It's
beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah, so when you see people in Portugal who are sort of darker skinned, it's one of the more common places they're from, right? Like Cape Verde is kind of like it's got that connection.
Cape Verde, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, you know, yeah.
Okay, but you grew up in Portugal, the mainland.
Yeah, I grew up in Portugal. I came here with 1 year.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
1 year old. All right,
So
let's clarify that, because I think the cultural piece here is significant, right? When we're talking about rhythm, where it's from, the different places to learn. It's a significant thing.
Yeah.
And drum circles for some listeners may be real familiar. You know, I've certainly sat in some when I lived in Ethiopia. It was so common. Someone would pull out a drum and then somebody else would start banging on a tin can. And sometimes like 3 or 4 hours later, you know, people are joining in just organically, starting rhythms. And this would happen, if not every day, regularly.
Yeah,
It wasn't like
the
an
spirit
event.
of the drum circle. Yeah.
Right. Like, so I've sort of seen it organically in East Africa. I'm guessing there are equivalences in West and other places, South. And, you know, obviously the sort of more like hippie, inverted commas, drum circles kind of become a thing.
Yeah.
And some viewers may know it, some listeners may know it, and some may not. Like, what is a drum circle? Let's just start right there.
Yeah. So, so like you said, drum circle is still being seen as a very hippie thing because it was born out of the hippie culture. But that's the modern drum circle, like the modern drum circle. But drum circle as a philosophy, it's something that exists for thousands of years in humanity. You know, it's the act of gathering people around music making, especially percussion instruments, where the whole community would dance, would sing, everybody would take part, and there wouldn't be this separation between musicians and non-musicians, or dancers and non-dancers. So everybody was allowed and was invited to be involved. So, but if you talk about the modern concept of drum circle, I would say that one of the fathers of it was Babatunde Olatunji, which is a Nigerian musician which migrated from Nigeria to the States back in the 50s, I think, 60s. And he was the first one to say to the white people, you should drum. You should drum and find your rhythm culture, you know? And he was one of the guys that inspired my teacher, which was Arthur Hall. So when an African guy comes to the Western world and realizes that that there's this culture needs to retrieve their power of rhythm, and he said it in a very humble way, and he was able to transmit that message. He said, go, people, go and look for drumming, you know? And it inspired a lot of people back in the day. And one of them was Arthur Hull, which was like a hippie that would gather around California, you know, and join with multiple people from multiple cultures and just drum, like you said, like could be Nigeria, could be anywhere in the world. People would just join in the circle and drum. And basically,
it's just after you.
Yeah, I was gonna say basically that's the principle. But then what happened was that there started to be there was the need of kind of leading these drum circles, because what was happening, and this was something that everybody relates to when they start drumming intuitively, was that at some point the people got together, they didn't have any knowledge at all, you know, about what they were doing, but they would start a rhythm, and then suddenly that rhythm would engage with other people, and suddenly there was a motion, yeah, you know, like a movement, and it made sense. But suddenly at some point, somebody got really excited and started going, bah, 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 and it would turn into chaos and it would fall apart, break down like a train wreck, you know? And that was when some people started realizing, to avoid that train wreck, which was that dismantling of the rhythm abruptly and not in a very nice way, they started to look for ways and tricks how to keep the movement going, how to make people that don't have in their body any rhythm culture, how to make them drum for hours, you know. And that's when drum circle facilitation was starting to be born. And the guy I studied with was one of the first ones. He has many books written.
Let's talk about this idea of rhythm culture then, and then we'll come back to maybe some of the benefits and things people get from being in drum circles. So you say, like, in a lot of sort of North European kind of Western culture, there's like classical music, which doesn't really have any rhythm, or not in the same way. And then I guess you've sort of, as well as the upper class classical tradition, you have folk traditions that have a lot more rhythm. Yeah. And I know, my own cultural background in Ireland, for example, there's the Irish drum, which you play with a kind of stick between your fingers, and you're going to hold in one hand.
Both drum.
Yeah, and you'll see people in pubs get them out, and maybe multiple people. And there isn't this distinction of like the musicians on the stage and the audience, in an Irish pub. There's musicians, and maybe someone pulls out a tin whistle and sort of joins in, or a fiddle. And it's very organic in that way. And even more so when I was in Ethiopia, like it's a communal participatory thing, even just, beating on a table. Yeah. Rather than the kind of audience, consumer, passive thing. There's a big distinction, isn't there, I think, within those kind of two types of things.
Yeah, because I think when somebody, I'm just guessing, from things I read, when somebody like Babatunde Olatunji, this man I talked about from Nigeria, says to Western people or to white people, you need to go out and retrieve your rhythm culture. What he was saying, it was not, oh, you should go and learn African rhythms. What happened in the Western world, and you can see through history, is that a lot of these folk traditions became separated from the community events, and they started becoming more like performances. And so what they did was that some people got really specialized or experts in doing rhythm, like musicians and so on. But then all the rest of the crowd just watched passively. And with time, centuries of that made people lose connection to rhythm. And then if you talk more in a more wider perspective of development, if we in the Western world, we created amazing things and we have everything, but all that we did, in a way, kind of separated us more and more from the rhythms of nature. We started living in big cities. Most of us live in big cities. We don't, you see kids that don't know that the cabbage comes from the earth. They think it comes from the supermarket.
Yeah. So pineapples are in factories or something.
Yeah, things like that. And so that separation from nature made us in the Western world lose contact with our own natural rhythm. And I think that's what this guy Babatunde Olatunji was talking about. Because if you go to Africa, even now, or if you go to some parts of Asia, this way of living music is so in the blood. People get together. They're gonna make the crops. Everybody comes and sings when they're doing the crops. Or they're gonna work and plow a land. They don't have machines, and they're gonna plow it all by hand, but there's somebody putting a rhythm on or song to motivate. So music is part of life, so they use music as this motivational tool. But if we go to the fields, we carry our own speakers and we have the music there. But in Africa, the people come and play. This is the difference. So everybody naturally is more connected to their rhythms. You know, it doesn't mean that they are big. You know, I'm totally against this perspective that says that, oh, you have African blood, so you must be good with dancing and with rhythm. This is a total bollocks, you know, let me say the word bluntly, because it has nothing to do with that, you know. That's really not true. Anybody, regardless of their skin color or their backgrounds, has music in them. And it's not because you are black that you dance better or play better. That's a myth, you know. And it's very hard to live with that myth. For me, I confess it was not easy, because everybody thought, oh, he's black and he's so good. Because I'm not. I struggled to study. I studied
practice
to
as
learn
well,
what
right?
I had to learn. All of this, you know.
Yeah.
It was
Like
not coming just like that.
a good example that I grew up. I grew up in a place there wasn't a lot of music around. I wasn't a big dancer, and then I went to live in the slums of Brazil. And in Brazil, you'll see people who are very dark skinned, and you'll see people who are whiter than me, you know, because their heritage could be from many places. It's a real mix in Brazil. And in the favela, it's all mixed up, and most people are somewhere in the middle, but there's a real spectrum. It's not black and white, it's the whole spectrum.
But Brazil is the biggest example of the world.
But the thing is, people there are dancing from when they are babies. You know, like music and rhythm and dance is there. So by the time everybody's 8 years old, it doesn't matter what color they are, they've got great rhythm. So the idea that it's something genetic for me is just nonsense, because I saw those kids and I didn't, you know, I saw that they could all dance better than me at 8 years old. And I thought, oh, they just grown up with this. You know, it's not like in their genetics somehow. Okay, so I love this idea that kind of cutting off from music, cutting off from this, even the word music almost feels like the wrong word, because it feels like a performance, right? Like now I am listening to music, like performative percussion, community sounding, you know, there needs to be almost another word for it. Like cutting off from that, we lose something, right?
Yeah. You know, it's like it's not very easy to find a term nowadays to explain what somebody like me does, you know, because, like, for example, I struggle a lot of times with some people ask me, but what do you do, or what is your profession? And like immediately what could jump to my head is musician, but I don't feel myself as a musician because of this concept that I have from the word musician. Musician is somebody who studied, you know, made all the efforts to become an expert in music, but just that. And that's not what I did. I did many turns and twists in my life, you know, to realize that that's not what I do, you know. For me, music is a tool for something greater. And so as a tool, it's something already in itself so big that I cannot box it into just performing, you know. So our society kind of managed the way to frame it in music performing, you know. And music is so much bigger than that, so much bigger. So that's why it's not easy, like for people like me, and there's others in the world, to really say or explain what am I. I normally say I'm a music facilitator, and especially I work with rhythm, because for me rhythm is in the foundation of everything, and rhythm for me goes beyond music, because inside of music you have rhythm, and rhythm is like huge. It's like it can overgrow over music, because rhythm is life. It's part of everything we understand, you know. Rhythm is polarity in action, you know. You have a sound, and then you have a silence, and then you have a sound, and then you have a silence, you know. And if you look at everything in life, if you look at nature, how light diffuses across the universe, how water, you know, how the tidal waves or how the rain comes, everything is about rhythm, you know, because there's a moment there's something happening, and there's a little moment there's something not happening, you know.
Right.
So
I mean, I was at a Chinese doctor today and she was feeling my pulse. So, what's she feeling? She's feeling my
yeah,
rhythm,
yeah,
right? She's like, how
yeah,
well are you? And I
yeah,
see this longing in people to get back to it. Someone said to me today, because of COVID and being indoors a lot, they were like, what year is it? What season is it? Or a lot of women in the embodiment world are getting interested in their female cycles. That's like a really big thing in the embodiment world.
in what,
There's
sorry,
their
in
female
the
cycles, their female
the female
cycles, their
cycle, yeah, yeah, yeah,
menstruation, their
yeah, yeah, yeah.
periods. Like that's super big again now. Like I feel we're aware that even something as simple as electricity, there wasn't
Yes,
much electricity where I used to live in Ethiopia. And so night was a big deal compared to here. There was a
yeah,
few light bulbs in places where we were, but it was much more minimal. There wasn't street lighting, for example,
yeah.
and it was a much bigger deal what season it was and whether it was day or night. And it feels like there's a longing to get back to those in a way.
Yeah, yeah. Like even when you talk about this, that you're saying like the woman cycle, like the women are really lucky in relation to us men because they have this phenomenon that happens in their body that is psychically happening, and it relates to nature. So it's very bluntly in their body that there's a rhythm. There's something that happens every days or every weeks, So they are very lucky in that. And I think that's one of the reasons that I feel, because like one of the things that I've been observing throughout my years of experimenting and facilitating groups, I don't know if you feel that, Mark, but I feel that like if I'm going to make a percentage of people who came like between male gender and female gender, I would say 70% women and 30% men.
Yeah, a group I was in last night, I was
Because women
shocked.
are
Yeah.
more engaged with this phenomenon of the rhythm, and so they are out there and going out looking for answers. Why did they stop having this connection with their own rhythm? Because they feel it stronger than we just don't have this phenomenon in our bodies, or we have it, but it's much more subtle. It's not so visible, it's not so physical. We have it as well, of course. If we do like I did for many years, which is engaging in this, looking at the cycles, feeling how the moon affects me, feeling how everything that's happening with the planets and everything that's happening with the earth, the seasons, the weather, everything affects me, And if you go really deep into that, you start to see that there's a pattern, meaning there's a rhythm.
Yeah. I mean, even just the rhythm in the day, it's a very definite. I went to the gym in the evening yesterday. I normally go in the morning, and I was like, oh, this is really different.
Yeah.
Like I'm having to adjust the weights and what I felt like doing and like strength and all these different, very physical things. I was like, oh, this is an entirely different thing than going in the morning. Yeah. And like even that kind of realization, the times of year, when in December in England, I don't want to work. If I've put stuff in my diary in December, I'm an idiot. I have to cancel it. I don't want to do a lot of work in December. I just want to hibernate,
Yeah.
But like that's something I'm a bit smarter about now. When I look at my diary, I'm like, okay, let's midsummer, midwinter, maybe let's not plan too much work in there,
Yeah, that's kind of you following up what you feel that's happening in nature, because if we live in this time zone, we have 4 seasons. So when it gets to December, we are reaching that point of like all of nature around us is going into the earth. So we also, as humans and as part of nature, of course, we want also to go back a bit more in. But the thing, what's happening with the craziness of the world, the jobs and everybody that's not aware, they are so overwhelmed with all these other things that they forget that they are not respecting the nature's rhythms, and that's when they start then like they will start feeling the problems, health problems or psychological problems, because they will start feeling that they are not able to engage with something which has been always there since ever, which is the rhythm of nature. you know, and we are part of nature, but we were able to create a culture that pulled us out of that rhythm, you know.
Pretending we're not until it kills us. Okay, so back to the drum circles then. So drum circles benefits. It connects people to this sense of natural rhythm. I've seen in them a kind of, you lose yourself in them sometimes. Like there's a sort of group flow. We had Stephen Kotler, who's a big flow guy on the podcast not long ago. And there seems to be a way in which, like sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't, I remember, you know, Ethiopia, like, I can't do this. And then I'd find myself going along and they'd be like, you know, people be encouraging me, you gotta, and before you know it, time's flown by. There's this great feeling of togetherness. Say again?
You get into a trance, you know.
Trance state and connecting with the other people. Like this is why you use them for team buildings, right? As well, is that there's a great connective sense to them.
Yeah, I think one of the magic things, you just mentioned it, one magic things about the drum circle is that like there's a phenomenon happening that transcends us, you know, and so we kind of get into this openness state, you know, of flowing. And what that does, it's kind of, for me personally, it dilutes the sense of me. I dissolve. The me dissolves into this larger being, which is the whole group playing. And when that happens, we suddenly are very humbled, because then suddenly we have access to information that we thought we didn't have, you know. And I think you can relate to that, because when we are centered in ourselves, when we are doing activities that we are centered in ourselves, we are working as a unit. It's, of course, it's strong, but if we realize that if we have the opportunity to gather more units to that state, and suddenly we are not only one unit, but we are 100, 120, and then suddenly all these units dissolve and they become one single unit, but it's a huge being of knowledge, you know. And that's when I think one of the magic things that happens is that we are able to access the collective memory of everything, you know, of the past, of the present, and of the future. And that's why one of the things you see happening in drum circles is people sometimes going crazy and doing things, and then suddenly, and they do beautiful things. And then if you ask them to do them again, they don't know, because it just came through them, you know.
I definitely found myself,
you know.
I don't have much musical skill, but I found myself being able to go along with things and keep up with things, or even add things, and it's like, where's this coming from? Like this
exactly. Where is this coming from?
Just giving your ego a break is fantastic, right? Like any group, people love sex and dancing and anything when they go into this sort of biggest, you know, higher self. The group, the individual kind of dissolves a bit into the collective, and then as you say, there's a transcendence, there's a emergence of creativity that seems to come through that.
And if you look back at what's happening now and what was happening for thousands of years, we are always kind of, as humans, we are looking for this state, for this feeling of being connected to something, being part of something, you know, something. Some people call it faith, some people call it religion, some people call it football, some people, whatever, spirituality. So we all are engaging to finding this something that gives us this sense of belonging. And if you look at shamanic cultures around the world, when I talk about shamanic cultures, I'm talking about the cultures that were able to survive despite of the coming of the big monotheist religions. And if you look what's arriving now, you know, through the, like, for example, through the medicine plant wisdom, is that state that we're talking about of dissolving the individual and being part of something bigger. That's what happens when you engage with the power plant, with the spirit, with the session, with the teacher plant. So in reality, my one of my drives was to explore all the multiple ways that there is to engage in that state. And for me, music and dancing, rhythm, it's one of them. You don't have to take the plant and you go into that state. You can take the plant and you go into that state,
right.
but you don't need
There's
it.
pros and cons, huh? There's pros and cons to taking mushrooms or something else. And music could be a safer or easier way in. You know, like imagine if you turned up in one of your Lisbon corporations and said, "Okay, guys, today we're all taking magic mushrooms." There may be an issue, you know.
No, it's easier for me to put them. You know, I had situations like you making jokes about that, but I had situations, stories with drum circles in companies that
yes,
you know, they come in all dressed up and and I get them all excited, banging on drums, and that whatever happens, you know. And then at the end, I had people coming to me. Wow, is that normal that I saw tribes and had visions and had things that have nothing to do with this actual reality? And I would say, maybe enjoy it, but I will not try to explain it to you, you know, because there's no point on it. But people which were coming from completely distant worlds, you know, from this spirituality or shamanic world, they would engage in visions which are completely related to this world. And you go, what? I didn't give them anything to drink. I didn't give them anything to smoke. The only thing I gave them was a drum, and I guided them to sing and express their happiness and their sadness, whatever. And suddenly they are there in that place, you know, and they have the memories of magical things happening. So yeah,
and how do they find it? I've done a fair bit of corporate work. I've even seen, you know, I had a friend of mine, Chris Terra, who used to do some drum work in kind of businesses, you know, locally, but I haven't done it in a while. And sometimes people would be a little stiff, a little resistant. You know, I saw good facilitator like Chris, another guy likely called Jamie, and they would just give them something small to tap on, you know, some kind of gentle way in. And pretty soon they'd open up. You know, I don't know how you find that, you know, a group's very resistant. What are some of your sort of secrets for kind of getting it going?
You know, I had multiple, you know, I think I could have, I don't know, maybe I had done drum circles for more than 50,000 people. Wow. In general, companies, you know. So I had multiple experiences, but I would say 99.9% of them, people are very easy, you know. But I can tell you that some drum circles takes me more energy than others.
Right.
I'm a person that when I go into that set, I give everything. So that means that if I want them to go crazy, I have to go crazy myself. So I go crazy, but for me to go crazy, I have to put a lot of energy. You know, I have to do a lot of things for me to go crazy. But I would say that there is a few tricks that you can use to break off people's resistance. And one of them, which was one of the most natural ways that I found, was always have a smile on.
Right. And be like that.
That's
sincere,
my
open
basic trick. If you love what you're doing and you are enjoying to do it, smile. And if you smile, everybody's like, you know, they are completely, all their barriers, they drop out immediately.
Right.
You know?
Makes sense.
For me, when I'm smiling, I'm not forcing a smile. It's from the heart. I'm having pleasure, like I'm talking now, right now.
Great job. It's a great job. Why not be happy doing that? Yeah. Like you could be in an awful job and you're teaching drumming and doing workshops with people. It's fun, huh? I have that same feeling when I'm teaching. I'm just like happy to be teaching. I'm happy to be doing embodiment. You know, I was just in Quinta Tenchi, which I'm sure you know, in Portugal, and I'm just happy to be there. And there's a sincerity to that. Like if we love what we do, there's a sincerity that opens other people up. But I guess you're sort of explaining it to them as well, though, right? You're saying like, hey, this is going to be great for your team cohesion and creativity. Like, do you kind of like do a talk on like why it's useful, or do you just kind of like jump straight in there?
Can you repeat the question again?
No problem. Do you kind of describe to them why it's useful? Like, hey, this is going to be great for your team cohesion, or some explanation, or do you just kind of give them instruments and go straight
on? Some points, what I started doing with as I became more mature with the process of facilitating, what I started doing is I've always was advocate of experience first, understand after. And in fact, that was one of the things I learned from one of the biggest teachers I had, which was Wilbert Alex. He passed away 2 years ago. He was my teacher for other modalities that I do. And he would say, experience first, understand after. So I always went for that. But what I started doing, especially in the corporate world, because people it's like we sell the drum circle as a team building activity. But for me, team building is a very general word.
Yeah, what does it mean? What does it mean?
It doesn't mean anything. It means,
is it just fun? Is it about communication?
I hate the word. I hate the word, But that's the easy. It's the same thing with meditation and mindfulness. Okay. If you go to a corporate company, if you go to a company and say, oh, we're going to do mindfulness. Oh, yeah. Wow. This is, but if you say it's meditation, well, what is that?
Okay. Sounds like different.
So team building, it's a very easy word to encompass. So, but what I do is much more deeper than team building, but that's the easier way to sell it. So what I started doing throughout the drum circle, the experience, I just did 2 days ago. It was a group of German people from Siemens.
Yeah, oh God.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound very rhythmic, does it?
Yeah. And for them, I know that in their heads, they're thinking, oh, this is a team building, this is a fun activity. It's just that. But so I started breaking down what is the real meaning of a team? Why is a team not working? And why is a team working? And you can see that bluntly, directly in a drum circle. If the people are open to follow somebody that's leading them with happiness and joy, okay, so let's explore that, So I started explaining people what is it happening throughout the drum circle, why people get confused sometimes, why they go into chaos. It's good to feel the chaos. It's good to be completely lost in the rhythm and experience that side, because in life it's going to be like that. And then to come back, why is it important that I drive you into chaos, then bring you back into harmony, So I started explaining that, and that started waking up in people the sense that the drum circle is much more than just a team building.
Right, there's more there.
Yeah.
I know there's much more here, but we're almost out of time. Yeah. Where do people find you if they want to kind of get in touch, give you a team building job or anything else? Where do they go?
Yeah, so they can go to ritmundo.com, which is my main website.
Could you spell that? Because I don't know. Yep.
Ritmundo.
Oh, like world.
Yeah, it's Ritmundo. It's a play game that I did on the word, because ritmo is the word for rhythm in Portuguese. Yep. Ritmo. Yeah, and then I enclosed it to Ritmundo, which means like rhythm for the world. But at the same time, if you say Ritmundo, rit means laughing.
Okay, so laughing with the world.
It's kind of saying two things. It's saying rhythm of the world, but it's saying laugh world, So the two things combined, I think, describe perfectly what our company is about, So we try to deliver, amazing experiences in the body, all totally in the body, for people to discover about themselves. And we use these potent tools, which are music, dance, breath, and things like this, So the easiest way to find me is at ritmundo.com, or in Instagram as Kula Lisboa, or Facebook as Kula Lisboa.
I'm pretty sure I'm following you there because I've seen some cool pictures of you at festivals and on the beaches doing gatherings and the more counterculture stuff as well as the corporate stuff. So yeah, really nice to see. Yeah. And any kind of closing messages about the body, anything you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I would so what I would say is, I can talk about my own experience in the sense that is I felt this pull or this curiosity since very young age to understand the invisible world, you know. And with time, I started realizing that the only way to understand this invisible world is through the body, you know. So what I would advise everybody in the world is go and do as much as experiences as you can, you know, try everything. And if it's something that calls you, then dive deeper into it. But expose your body to experiences, because only then you will know what is there for you, what life is being offered to you, you know. So I think something simple like that.
Beautiful, man. The time has flown by. I really enjoyed catching up with you again. I'm sure I'll see you in Portugal again.
Bye.
Like, how did that happen? I got to take a break for the next podcast.
I could talk for more 2 hours then.
We always have a nice flow, so you know, I think me and you are going to become friends over the years. So I'll see you
I love
again,
you, Mark. And I tell you, and I tell you just now, this is personal, that it's being quite a pleasure to get to know you more and more, because you are a very curious person, full of interesting layers, and it's always fun to hang around with you, because you have what it calls a very particular sense of humor. And I had a teacher one time, this same guy, Wilbert Alex, he was saying to me that whenever you are looking out for a teacher or somebody that's a guide for you, somebody that's going to be a representative figure for you to follow or to learn, look first if this person has a good sense of humor and he makes good jokes. Because if he doesn't have a sense of humor, he doesn't laugh about himself, you don't bother following.
That's a warning sign, isn't it? So I'm not sure if my humor is a warning or a recommendation, but let's leave it there. Thanks, man.
Yeah.